Hey everybody, welcome back to Soul School. Now it's about that time to get into tonight's subject. Tonight's subject on Soul School is the one and only Marvin Gaye. Now this is a most difficult subject to actually tackle because Marvin Gaye is an absolute monster. He's always been a monster from his days with the Moon Glows, whether he was the Spinners drummer back in 61, 62, whether he was writing stuff like Dancing on the Streets for Martha and the Vandellas. He was his whole wish in the beginning was not to do R&B. It was really kind of more of a Sam Cooke, Nat King Cole type of deal. He hated R&B, and it's interesting because, as we all know, he was probably perhaps it's arguable. It's really arguable that he's the best ever artist ever to do it. And the interesting thing that I've always found really interesting about Marvin Gaye is he really cut stuff when he was inspired to do it, as opposed to just putting out albums just for putting them out to meet a deadline for a record company or whatever. And a lot of people are really, of course, infatuated with the stuff that he did, like with Leon Ware, the I Want You album, the Let's Get It On album, which is that's a whole nother story. What's Going On album, which might be the greatest album ever recorded. Between that for me and Sly and the Family Stone Stand album, those are the two, my picks for me. Live at the London Palladium, the Divorce album, Here My Dear. Marvin Gaye may be the greatest artist that has actually ever done music. I mean, I don't like to get into that, but when I certainly look back at his catalog, it's an argument. It's a legit argument. And it's interesting, the album that I want to get into an album review, which is called The Moods of Marvin Gaye. Let me see if you can get a good look at it. Yeah, there we go right there. This particular album right here was one that Barry White, Luther Vandross, amongst other greats, were like just really crazy about because during that particular time period, Motown was really on fire because of the Supremes, of course. The Miracles were, breaking ground and playing clubs like up in, Las Vegas, places like The Trip, and just different places that a lot of, our people weren't getting into back then. Blacks in Vegas at that time. You might have Sammy Davis Jr. and a few others, but it wasn't, it was really a big deal when you played places like The Trip and Jules Podell's Copacabana in New York and just different places like that. Well, Marvin Gaye was one of the few people that actually could get down like that. And this particular album here, during the time period of Hitchhike and all that kind of stuff. But this particular album here really gets lost. Ain't That Peculiar is on this album, which is an absolute monster. What is it? I'll Be Doggone is on this album. Your Unchanging Love. I mean, it's an absolute monster. And it's an album that's actually never, ever talked about. And I want to do an album review of this album and just kind of get people to be introduced into, stuff like this by Marvin Gaye, as opposed to just being into the quote-unquote usual suspect stuff, like, of course, nothing wrong with that stuff like Trouble Man and all that other kind of stuff, but Marvin had been bad for like a really long time. And this particular period of music was really special because Smokey, who was doing a lot of writing, was an absolute monster. And quiet as it's kept, the OJs back then, if you talk to people that were really truly in the entertainment business, they'll tell you the OJs was probably the baddest group on the road at that particular time. And I know that sounds crazy because the Temps were around, but the OJs also were around like that, some of the stuff that they were actually doing. But Marvin Gaye, as a solo artist, was the dude that I really kind of like gravitated towards, in reference to the studies that I've done over the years, and even I would have it verified by older people who actually saw him, like at Bimbo's in San Francisco, when blacks weren't really playing clubs like that in the mid-'60s. Anybody who's ever been in his presence or seen him live, and I was fortunate enough back in the day, I think it was, well, not back like that, of course, I wasn't around, but like 79 when I was living in LA, he did the national anthem for a Lakers playoff game versus, I think it was David Thompson and the Denver Nuggets or whatever it may be, and he had on the beanie and all this and that or whatever, and you could kind of like really feel the presence. And it's not the all-star theme that everybody's thinking about, but that was like back in the day. But this particular period of Marvin Gaye is very, very special. Matter of fact, let me let you get a look of the back of the album cover. And, this is it's a trend-setting, mind-bending experience, and he's a mind-bending personality. Didn't do all the dancing and all that other kind of stuff, but he had like this charisma that was just something you really can't really quantify in reference to just being a great vocalist. Marvin Gaye was just really, really, truly something special. And if you talk to your grandparents and just people like that, there's always one or two Marvin Gaye songs that makes them go like this, they just, hey, sookie, sookie, and they just get the drinking or whatever it may be. And, even when you watch Baby Boy, when Ving Rhames and they were in there jamming just to keep you satisfied from the Let's Get It On album. But this particular period here of Marvin Gaye is one that is not talked about, and it's a real critical mass period because he did a lot of television. It was the prototype for what was later to come, because even like a few later, you had Chain, I'm Chain, with your love and affection, and UIC, and that particular period, Heard It Through the Grapevine. But this is like a little bit before that, and like right after the Hitchhike period, whatever. And I love talking about cats like this because for those who may not know and who didn't really live it, I try to kind of paint the picture so you can really quantify in your own way. And more importantly, once the show is off, I kind of hope I say something that makes you want to get on the Google or go on the iTunes or go on eBay and start looking for records or whatever, where you can kind of study this stuff for yourself. And Marvin Gaye is a cat that really, if you begin to like really, really like study him, it's like really opening Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just unbelievable. He was absolutely unbelievable. Let's get into some songs from the Moods of Marvin Gaye album from 1966, and I'll be back with a final thought to say goodnight.
Let me tell you a little something about the money, honey. All right. Well, I'd be doggone if I wouldn't work all day, baby. And I'd be doggone if I wouldn't bring you my pay, baby. But if I ever caught you running around, throwing my money all over this town, then I wouldn't be doggone. Hey, hey, I'd be long gone, long gone. I wouldn't be doggone, baby. I'd be long gone. I'd be long gone. Now, hey, 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 I'd be doggone if you ain't a pretty thing, baby. And I'd be doggone if you ain't warm as a breath of spring, oh, baby. And if we live to be 100 years old, if you ever let that spring turn cold, then I wouldn't be doggone. Hey, 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 I'd be long gone. Be what? I wouldn't be doggone, baby. I'd be long gone.
Yeah, he's funky on, Bubba. And and isn't she lovely? And on and on and on and on. The history is right here with Soul School Television. And I'm Shock G from the Digital Underground. And Humphrey says hello.